Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 367 of the Stacey West podcast. I'm your host, Ben, and tonight I'm joined by Charlie. How on earth are you doing, mate? You keeping well?
I am very well, thank you. I've weirdly got a little bit of a lisp at the minute, so if that kind of comes through, I do apologise. I've got a mouth ulcer, so I'm sure no one wanted to know that, but I thought I'd say it anyway.
You've got a mouth ulcer and also Wi-Fi issues. I'm telling you guys, we cut it very, very, very fine tonight. Charlie literally dropped into the studio about 20 seconds before I hit the button. So that was all fun and games. But no, other than that, what you've been up to, man? It's you're still enjoying your time abroad and living that exile life.
I am. I had the week off work last week, which was a very, very nice change. I've said it before on the podcast. I'm not used to this working life. I'm used to the university dosser life, as many will call it. But no, I had the week off work. I had family over. My parents came over for the Tuesday to Saturday for almost a full week. I had some friends over as well. It was really, really good. Granted, I had the time off for the horse racing. But they all came over to come and see me, so it made me feel special for the week. But no, it's been really, really nice, a nice kind of switch of pace. And yesterday, I went ahead and booked my flights to come back over in April for an event that we won't be mentioning on the podcast. I've come over for a long weekend over in April, which again I'm really looking forward to getting back to the bank for probably the last time this season. I said to myself, I'll come back over once more. That will either be for the playoff final or it will be for just a game towards the end of the season. So maybe we can read a lot into the fact I'm coming over for a home game against Shrewsbury.
I was going to say, I think probably the first one might have been slightly optimistic given where we are at the minute.
We can dream. We can dream, Ben. We can dream.
Absolutely. I did hear the other day actually about there's a thing that a lot of people are doing when it comes to the Cheltenham Festival, and they're going abroad to watch it because it's cheaper than going to Cheltenham.
So this is the funny thing. So obviously I had what originated from it was I had always decided as soon as I started work, I was going to book the week off. Me and a friend of mine who lives over here, we're going to go. There's a big bar out over in Jib that has a massive outdoor screen, and they show the racing for the whole week. So obviously for me, perfect. It's going to be a big screen. I actually might be able to see it, and to sit out, have a few drinks in the afternoon, watch it. And my parents said to me, "Oh, we're thinking of coming over March, April time." So I said, "Could you make it this specific week in March?" Like, "Oh, why is that?" Because I've already booked the week off, and I want to double book it to make it a little bit easier for myself. And do you know what? To be fair, like I said, my parents came over. We had a few friends over as well, and it was so nice having all of us sat in front of that TV. It wasn't nice after the second or third race, but outside of the actual racing, it was nice.
I was going to say, are you essentially living on noodles and water for the rest of the month, Charlie?
I've not eaten my dinner yet, so. I've got jam and I've got bread in the cupboard, and that'll do me for the rest of the week.
There we go. Well, I mean, it's said I've also had a week off. I'm currently in the middle of a week off. It's always nice after a particularly busy spell. I had my birthday on Monday. We went out for a meal, went to Hickory's, which was absolutely brilliant.
Happy birthday, Ben, by the way, from everyone at the Stacey West. Although we told you in the group chat, but we'll tell you again.
Yeah, it was. If you we're not sponsored, but if you get a chance, go here, Chris. 'Cause it's bloody brilliant, and the food was amazing and massive. So, yeah, I think I'm still digesting it now, to be honest. And that was Monday night. So, but look, we're not here to talk about food. We're not here to talk about horse racing. We are, of course, here to talk about Lincoln City. Now, Charlie, have you quite recovered from Saturday's mauling of Bristol Rovers?
So Friday night, and chances are my parents will be watching this right now, and they can probably testify to this fact. Friday night was a bit of a big night in terms of everybody over, so I'm sure you can imagine it finished in the early hours of the morning. And I woke up Saturday morning like, oh God, I'm really, really feeling it today. Like, my parents flew back home on the Saturday morning. I didn't even go to the airport to go wave them goodbye. That's how I got out of bed. It's really bad, I know, but I just couldn't get out of bed. And I'm sat there Saturday lunchtime, like, do you know what? Do I even want to watch this Lincoln City game? do I even want to put myself through the trauma? Which, in all fairness, we've probably all felt at certain points throughout this whole season. But I said, you know what? Of course I will. And obviously that's what happened. And yeah, it was pretty spectacular. Now, I'll say this on the podcast because it was a year ago. I had heard a couple of weeks after we beat Bristol Rovers last year, 5-0. Obviously, basically the same weekend. In terms of, for me, it's the same weekend because it was after the Cheltenham Festival. Turns out what I'd learned this time last year was that a good few of the Bristol Rovers players were at Cheltenham Festival enjoying themselves, shall we say.
Oh, okay.
Something tells me after watching Saturday, could have been the same case this year.
Well, look, if we can continue to play Bristol Rovers the week after the Cheltenham Festival, I'm sure none of us will ever complain about that. So, I mean, look, as is kind of the way when we have a one game week at the minute, we don't have a huge amount of news that is coming out of the club. And to be fair, there hasn't really been anything officially coming out of the club, other than a couple of bits about the season ticket renewals, and you can win a place in the team photo if you renew this week. So that could be quite an interesting one. But one thing that has come out today is about Bailey Cadamartri. He is, according to the Sheffield Star, they understand that things are originally worse than feared regarding his injury situation. And it sounds like he could be facing weeks out before he gets back from injury again. Obviously, not a huge amount of games left in the season. Are we potentially thinking that this could well be another one, maybe that doesn't see the season out? And well, I mean, obviously with him being a lone player, could end up back at Sheffield Wednesday before the season is done. And also, is it going to have a massive impact on what we want to do before the end of the season, Charlie?
There's a couple of questions in that. Is it going to make a massive impact on us? Probably not. And that feels really harsh to say because we know what Cads has brought to the squad, to the games that he's appeared in and started in so far this season. Is it going to make a massive difference to the squad? Again, no, I don't think so. It's a shame because you never want to lose a player at any point of the season, whether that be a lone player, whether that be, even if it's an academy player that's played 10 games throughout the course of the season. You don't want to lose them. You don't want to not have that option. But I don't think it makes a massive difference to the course of the season. Because, again, for me, I'd settled for mid-table obscurity a while ago. I'm more than happy to still be there. If it means the difference between finishing 12th and 13th, is what it is. It's just a shame to not have him around. I think the kind of the first part of that question, if it is a long-term injury, if it's 6 weeks and there is a tiny chance that he plays the last game of the season, honestly, I think Sheffield Wednesday would be smarter to recall him. As much as I think it would be nice for us to see him one last time, it's probably not likely we'll see him next season. No. So I'm kind of happy for them to... I'm going to say happy for them to take him back. It feels a little bit harsh to use those words, but I hope you kind of get what I mean with that. Whereas
yeah, I mean, it's not
we've done the same before,
Yeah, it's not like you're saying, oh, yeah, get rid of him, you can go back, and we don't really care. It's one of those where I think, given the state of our season, if we still had, if we were still, tickling the playoffs, shall we say. We'd probably be we'd probably feel this a lot more, because obviously the more options you've got to try and mount that kind of challenge, then the better. I think we've probably accepted that ship sailed at this point, so we'll just play for what we can get and where we can finish. And I think ultimately, it will be a shame if he goes, but it's an interesting one. Very, very interesting one. Oh, your dad has just commented saying we are watching, and he had a great week apparently. Look, I mean, it would be a shame if Cads were to go, and I do agree with you. I don't think we'll see him again next season. I wonder if there will be a renewed sort of focus on any loan players up top next season, particularly if we keep everybody over the summer, and whether we would be able to. I don't really think we need too much expansion there. Now, obviously, with Tyler Walker out on loan at Wealdstone, and actually grabbing a goal and assist at the weekend as well. So, they
played a full 90 last night as well.
Yeah, so 3-0 down and brought it back to 3-3 with him getting a goal and assist. And also the other goal was a penalty, so I wonder if he was the one that was brought down for that. I haven't seen anything around that. But I mean, look, it's weird to think that we're finishing with two of the prospects that we were actually quite excited about at the start of the season not finishing the season with us, potentially. But having said that, Jovan's come into a purple patch. I think signing of James Collins has made a huge difference. Ben House maybe hasn't quite had the season that he would have wanted to have had. And then obviously, Freddie's probably in that boat as well. But I think there's a solid foundation and a solid, ground to build on there for next year. Whether we do go for a striker in the window, I don't know. But yeah, I think there's potential there for everything else going into next season. So
I think as well, the fact that we're sat here, or at least, I was very much sat here kind of saying it probably doesn't make too much of a difference to where we're headed now. And again, we'll always miss a player, but I don't think we'll miss Bailey Cadamartri as much as we maybe thought at the start of the season we might at certain points throughout the year. It's probably a testament to, again, the other players around the squad. The likes of Freddie, the likes of James Collins, who came in the winter, and of course Jovan, who was again exceptional at the weekend. And it's the performances of those players that I think make the loss of someone like a Bailey Cadamartri for the next 6-8 weeks just kind of feel so much easier. Again, even though you never want to lose a player for the running, no matter where you are in the table.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, this does add to our injury table, or the treatment table, alongside Ethan Arahan and Jack Moylan, who are both out for a little bit longer. I think Marcus Kubala said at the weekend that Arahan's probably due back in the next 3 or 4 weeks, so that will be it'd be a welcome return when he comes back. But like I said, I think it's probably more about building on what we have ready for next season at this point more than anything else. Really, to be honest with you, that is probably the only real news since the weekend. I think everyone is just on that bit of that high from the weekend. So what we did, as we tend to do when news is a little bit light, we threw some questions out to the Patreon-only Discord. We've got a few. We've got a few more bits in there from questions from people, and one that came to light, which I think is probably one that has been spoken about already. I know the club have obviously mentioned it as well. It came to light in the fans forum. Is that around Zayn Okoro? Malcolm Johnson here saying, missed the beginning as usual. Can't you put it on the Radio Times when you're going to be on? We'll get in touch with them, but I don't think they schedule podcasts, unfortunately, Malcolm. So,
so if you're in the Patreon Discord, that's where we announce when we're going live.
Indeed, but no, look,
shameless plug.
Yeah, going back to Zayn. Obviously, the news is that he has linked up in some form or another with Bournemouth. It sounds like that is a kind of a, almost like a work experience loan of some sort, similar to what we've done with a few of our youngsters that have gone out on loan. But I think it sounds like he's now being treated very much as a trialist. My understanding is that he scored in a game for, was it their reserves or their second team in the week? But long and short of it, basically, it sounds like Okoro got the goal. There wasn't really any naming of him, but when there is a trialist on a team sheet, people tend to work it out quite quickly. Sounds like Zane was the one there. So I think the questions come up about, what's the situation with Zane Okoro, and how does it work when you're dealing with youth player contracts, and in particular one in a situation like this where Zane is not on a professional deal, but it looks like there could be a Premier League club sniffing around a little bit. So, I mean, first up, Charlie, what are your thoughts on it? And anything that you've got that you are aware of from your time with Football Manager, maybe more than anything else. But obviously we've got a little bit of research that's gone into it, so we do have some details. But obviously, it's a bit of a difficult one to try and pluck out, isn't it?
No, look, of course it is. It's really difficult with a situation like this because we are sat here talking about young lads, 16-year-old lads, as assets. Because we do, if our football club is going to let this young player go, we want to know that we've got the most amount of money for them. And it's a conversation that we've probably both had at certain points with the likes of Jez George around, okay, what do what's the best course of action in this particular situation? And do you know what? The one thing that, again, our football club does really, really well is they make sure to bridge the gap between what is right for us as a club and also what is right for the player. There's no denying that there will sometimes be a situation where those two things are totally separate. And, we sometimes maybe have to prioritize us as the football club. But also when it's these young lads, they've always taken this kind of real care to make sure to take the personal element into it. There is a good chance that, I'm saying there's a good chance, realistically, for someone like Zane Okoro, if he's got the option of being in League One with Lincoln City, or he's got the option of being in the Premier League with Bournemouth, they could be the better option. So then it is totally fair enough. How can we best be compensated for that? Now, last year we did an academy special with, it was me and Chris who did it. And I've mentioned in that academy special that I'd spoken to Jez for a good bit of time beforehand to try and figure out exactly what the position of our academy at the time was, what were the finances going in, what were the finances going out, just try and give myself a better idea before basically then sitting on this podcast and talking about it. And there was a conversation in there, and I mentioned it in the podcast, that we had let a young lad go, a teenager who we'd probably not heard of, as in us as genuine just fans of the club who will watch the first team and maybe notice a couple of the names on the under-18s list, but was maybe even a little bit younger than that, had let them go to a club, not too far away, because up to the age of 16, it must be to a club an hour and a half away, is the general kind of rule of thumb, to let them go. And we had let this player go for a decent fee. The fee was never told to me. The fee was never mentioned on here or anything like that, but it was for a decent fee. And always when you hear words like that, you sit there and think, yeah, but how much? And if Zane Okoro does leave for Bournemouth, which we hope doesn't happen, because it clearly seems like he's a bit of a prodigy. But if it does happen, we want to know, well, how much will that be? It's really, really difficult to pinpoint that. It's always really, really hard. But I would imagine it would be the sort of fee that we would maybe expect an average squad player in our squad to go for. I think, as an absolute hazard of a guess, it would be within the 5-6 figures. Probably a little bit lower, lower 5, lower 6.
Well, I think so. I did have a little bit of a look online around this, and it's it's a little bit murky is the wrong word, because that implies that there's something, potentially dodgy going on, and it's not that at all. It's just very difficult to get hold of solid information around, what could potentially happen with players in an academy, because to be honest, a lot of the time you're not going to know, or you're not going to need to know that as a fan. It's mainly going to be sort of backroom stuff and behind the scenes stuff. So it would appear that we would receive, if he were to go now, because he isn't on a professional contract, we would be entitled to compensation for the amount of years that he's been in the academy, which I believe is 2. It also depends at what level he's played at the academy. So under 18s, obviously the fact that he's made some first team appearances would probably come into that decision as well. But that figure, I think I saw something between there we go. In the youth development phase, it varies from up to from £12,000 to £24,000 per year that the player has been in the academy system. So if we were to say, for example, look at just that figure, we would potentially be looking at a fee of at least £48,000 for Zayn Okoro. And then on top of that, I believe you have kind of a future interest baked into the player as well. So we would have an interest on his next 2 transfers.
I think if Football Manager is correct, I do believe it's around 5% minimum on that. Now, I just want to add to this, by the way, because a player that we think is probably one of the stars of the season, who was also on trial with Premier League clubs when he was probably around Zayn's age, maybe even a little bit older, Sean Rowan. And Sean Rowan obviously didn't end up going to a Premier League club at the time and chose to stay with us, had to stay with whatever the situation was there. Who knows? It's all speculation, isn't it? It's what transfers are all about. But was with us and is now one of, if not, is one of our best defenders, definitely our best left-sided defender, of course. So something like this, I only see as a positive. Again, maybe it's just red and white tinted glasses, of course, because you never want to lose a player. But I only see this as it means a Premier League club is sniffing around one of our youngsters. That means we're fishing in the right pond.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I can understand. I did see a couple of comments from people suggesting, why don't we see more around the first team? Or it'd be gutting to lose him, or maybe even a little bit of criticism thrown that way as well. And it's one of those that you look at and you think, similar to the conversation that we've had around Paulie O'Connor. You can't make somebody sign a professional contract. You can't make somebody sign a deal. So if it is that, Zayn's come through the academy and he sat there, he goes, I'd love to play, I want to be a professional footballer. Yeah. At what point does he make that decision that, okay, well, I can either go from here maybe into, say, Bournemouth's academy setup and continue that for a little bit? Or do I stay at a League One club, build a profile here, and then as a professional, as a young professional, go for whatever fee is afforded to us later down the line? It's a decision that, I have no doubt that the club would either would have offered or will be in the consideration to offer Zayn a professional contract, because it just makes perfect sense. Whether or not that, Zayn, his representatives, whatever, would be in a position to say, well, we'll take that, or we think we may have a better option somewhere else. Whatever that option is, we will benefit in some way. If it is that he goes to Bournemouth or Premier League side to play in an academy, or, for a second string, it would obviously be gutting. We'd obviously love to see him play and ply his trade for us for a little bit longer. But, it's the way that the business works, unfortunately. So let's have a quick look at what was said here. So big thanks to John Booth, actually, who did put a little bit of detail in the Discord around this. So it's I think from the figures that he could find, we'd potentially be looking at an initial 40 to 60k plus academy costs. So obviously there would be an additional fee alongside that initial one, plus more based on future appearances and transfers. So there is a significant sell-on fee for the next 2 moves, which then becomes a nominal percentage for the rest of his career. So we would have a future interest in him for basically in perpetuity, which would be phenomenal if he went, if he becomes a real talent and goes for millions and millions down the line. We could be entitled to money forever. Well,
no, absolutely, and I just want to say for that, I get and I agree. We want that kind of a player playing for us. Of course we do. But just to flip it on its head, because I know that will be the comments. If he goes to Bournemouth, hypothetically, he goes to Bournemouth and suddenly then he becomes a superstar and we get, because it would be effectively pennies on the pound for this player compared to what we might have been able to get if he stayed with us. You see the likes of Richard Kone at Wycombe being offered £6 million or £10 million or whatever it is from Luton. We maybe wouldn't get anywhere near that. But again, to flip that on its head, think about the likes of Brennan Johnson, Morgan Rogers. Think about where their careers are now. And we all see the jokes, don't we? On banter, on Twitter, wherever it might be, saying, oh, do we get a development fee? Well, for someone like Zayn Okoro, we will.
We would.
And doesn't that kind of just show a difference, even just to 3 or 4 years ago, where maybe we were in a better league position, but to think of the fact that we're now in that position in terms of player development, it's a nice little way to think about it, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I mean, like I said, if we could turn around and say, here is a contract, please sign it, and everybody signs it, then we'd all be happy and everybody would be laughing. But unfortunately, it's not the world that we live in. So whatever happens, whether we offer Zayn a contract and he signs it, or whether Bournemouth offer him a contract and he signs it, or he goes somewhere else, there will be a future benefit to us somewhere down the line with Zayn. And whatever the choice is, I hope he absolutely smashes it, because from what we've seen of him, he looks really good. He looks a real prospect.
Agreed.
So, right, where are we now? I think that was pretty much what we had for the first half. So shall we have an earlier break this evening, Charlie? I was going to say at the beginning, we'll probably have a slightly shorter podcast this week, but given that we've nearly hit half an hour already, that's maybe not the case. Well, actually, a good question from Andy Brown here. He says, could it be that he could come back on loan? Always an option, isn't it? If he were to go, if he were to go to a Premier League club and then comes back on loan for a season or two, we developed him at an academy level. We might as well help develop him at a professional level as well.
100%, and it's a sort of player that if he goes now, I'd love to see him in a couple of years' time. I'm of the mindset that a loan player should be one of the best players in your squad. If he's not quite there yet, then maybe there's very little benefit to that. But later down the line, if there's benefit, then absolutely. Yeah,
cool. Okay, right. Well, we will take a break then. We will say hello to the folks on YouTube that are watching live, and we'll be back after these adverts. Cool. I believe Charlie needs a wee.
I do. I'm just going to be a moment.
Oh dear. Right. How are we doing, peeps on YouTube? Charlie, please, if you're taking your headphones with you, please make sure your microphone is muted. I don't think he is, so that's all good. Right, let's see who we've got in the chat. We've got Richards in the chat saying, even Ben and Charlie, stick another 50p in the meter and let's crack on. Harry Jackson's in. Evening, lads. John Booth is in. Good evening. Flossie Tops is in. Good evening, everybody. Roy is in. Evening, gents. Rich saying, I'll bring that back when Charlie's here. Andy Brown, as we've seen, he is in. Let's have a look. Malcolm is in as well. There's a couple of questions that have come up too. And Keith is in. There we go. Keith Clifton. So cool. So I'm just trying to fill Jazz hands while Charlie's gone for a wee, I guess. It's always a bit of a weird one when you're on your own. And I thought for a minute, I genuinely thought I'd have to do the podcast for a little bit on my own because Charlie was very late to the studio. But he is back now. He is back now.
Evening, YouTube. How are we all doing?
We're all good. Richard Godson saying life in the colonies ain't what it used to be, Charlie.
No, do you know what? Maybe not, but I can't complain too much.
There we go. Right, so we will come back in on in a second, and then we'll kick off the second half of the show. We've got another good question. So, right, in 3, 2, 1. And we are back from our little commercial break. Charlie's gone for a wee-wee. We've said hello to the people on YouTube. Everything is all good over here. So, there was a question actually that came in just as we went on the break from Oliver. He says, did the player who we lost on EPPP ever get named? I assume they're too young at the moment, but if we get money from him playing, it'd be nice to know when it can be disclosed. I've not heard a name linked to that. I don't know if the club have actually released that, but I would imagine as things happen down the line, we will obviously the money will be included in the accounts, so it may be one where we could draw some conclusions to, or maybe even the club announces it. I don't know.
Well, it was mentioned that the situation itself, I believe, was mentioned in the accounts last year.
Mm-hmm.
The name certainly wouldn't have been. I doubt that the name. I wonder if the name ever will. I would be surprised if it ever did. It's maybe one of those where if it gets big enough, then maybe it will. But I can't imagine it being something that gets named really. Although it'll probably be one of those that comes out under speculation and things a few years down the line.
Somebody will say something, and then it will start to gain traction. Like, future England captain started his career at Lincoln City Academy. I don't know, but look, okay,
it'd be nice.
So, it would. So before we jump into the preview, we did have another question in the Discord. This one was from Shane, and it's one that I think we touched on it before, but I think this was way back when it was just me and Gaz doing the pod. So I think it's probably evolved a little bit since then in terms of an answer. But it was, if you could create a dream Lincoln City team made up of any players, past or present, who would be in your starting lineup and why? So I'm gonna limit this to players that we've maybe seen. I'm assuming that's what your list is, Charlie. So
I'm a fetus, aren't I? So
you are. So it's probably just going to be this year's squad, isn't it? So let's have a look. Right, if we'll start with the formation. What formation are you going with, Charlie?
Oh Jesus, that is awful.
You know what players you've got, so surely you can fit them into a formation.
Let's go 4-3-3 purely because we've been limited on strikers.
Okay, that's fair. So I've gone with typical Mike Bassett 4-4-2, unless I suppose you could probably do this as a 3-5-2, 5-3-2 if you wanted to. The right and left back can play wing back, no problem. So we'll start with your goalkeeper, Charlie. Who have you got?
You see, again, this was a really tough one. Purely because we've been royally blessed with goalkeepers in recent years, haven't we? And a lot of mine are obviously going to be recent years. But I have gone with the one who got us to the playoff final, the one who was currently playing in the Premier League, Alex Palmer.
Fair enough. I think it's more for nostalgia than anything else. But as soon as you say Lincoln City goalkeeper, there's just one name that comes into my head, and I just go, "Yep, Alan Marriott." Straight away, first name on the sheet.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so it's Alan Marriott in goal for me, Alex Palmer for Charlie. Right, right back, Charlie.
Purely for what he did when he was here, I have to go Neil Eardley.
We have a match. We have we have a match there. Neil Eardley for me. I was trying to cast my mind back and think of some of the right backs that we've seen at Lincoln back in my day, as I think I should probably say.
You old bastard.
But I couldn't really look too much further than Neil Eardley. Just a player that came to us with all of the hallmarks of a player that we thought was going to be injured permanently and was pretty much a mainstay in that defence. Phenomenal. Shall we flip it and go to left back?
Someone tells me this might be another match, so I'm going to ask you first then. Who's your left back?
As if you need to ask me. It's Harry Toffolo, of course it is.
Again, shocker. For me, this was actually a little bit of a tough one because one of my favourite Lincoln players from the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years, basically my life, is actually Theo Eden. And I really loved, I thought he was one of the most, if not the most underrated part of that playoff season. And I was not surprised that he was one of the players that was snapped up by a championship club. Loved Theo. However, I also thought that if I was going to be picking anyone other than Toffolo, it would just look as though I was being edgy and cool. So we're going to go Harry Toffolo because you can't not have him in that list, can you?
Absolutely not. So right, you've gone 4 at the back, haven't you? So let's have your 2 centre backs.
So again, recency bias, of course, will fall into this. First of all, purely for that moment and that moment alone, Sean Raggett has to be in there for me. And second of all, honestly, Lewis Montsma. He may not be the best of the centre halves that we have even at the moment. Paudie O'Connor may have had a better Lincoln City career than what Lewis Montsma has had, whatever you want to use. I don't care. Lewis, for me, is just... And for the record, I think those two as a partnership could work incredibly well.
Yeah.
But I just think Lewis is one of those players that you just don't really see that often for a centre-back. The way that he is able just to grace the field, an absolute Rolls Royce of a centre-back. So, I really wanted to put him in.
So I think this is the thing. When you look at centre-backs that we've had, you can start to rattle them off and think, they've made a big impact at the club, going all the way back, the ones that stick in my mind, the likes of Steve Holmes. You've got, like you say, Sean Raggett, you've got Luke Waterfall. For me, there were 2 names that stuck out. They're both captains, Paudie O'Connor and Paul Morgan. They just like epitomise what I expect from a Lincoln City captain. And for me, your captain should more or less always be a centre back. So they can fight it out between themselves as to who they who gets the armband. But those 2 for me were shoo-ins.
Who does get the armband?
Oh.
If you were the manager and you had to pick your captain, who gets the armband? If you're saying it has to be one of them 2.
Jesus. I mean, you'll never beat him, so it's got to be Paul Morgan.
Fair enough.
Did Paul Morgan play? You would have been about 2, I think, when Paul Morgan was playing, which makes me really sad. But yeah, what a player he was! Just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Richard Godson here saying no Lincoln City backline is complete without Trevor Peake. Unfortunately, Richard, this is where I look like a fetus. I never saw Trevor Peake play.
Funny enough, neither then.
So yeah, and Sam Ellis. Sam Ellis, I think, maybe if I remember rightly, I think his career started sort of dwindled as I was coming into watching the club. So yeah, right. You've got 3 in midfield. I have 4. Let's hear.
You go first then.
Okay. Do you want me to do all 4 of them, or
why not?
Okay. We'll go across. We'll go across the midfield 4. For me, Gareth Ainsworth, Michael Boswick, Ethan Arahan, and Peter Gain. They are quite possibly 4 of the best players I have ever seen play for Lincoln City, for multiple reasons. I mean, Ainsworth just is a legend for good reason. Michael Boswick had the best attitude I have ever seen of anybody crossing the white line for Lincoln City, and I just love the man. Ethan Arahan, he is one of, if not the best player I've ever seen play for us. And Peter Gain was just a magician out on the left. So that they are the 4 for me. I've got Ainsworth, Boswick, Arahan, and Gain. Nice.
So it's a weird one with this one. So I almost matched your 2 centre mids in Bozzy and Arahan. Sorry, we'll go with the Sky pronunciation. Ahaha.
The Frenchman, Ethan Ahaha.
Of course. However, I dropped Bozzy purely because I didn't want my midfield 3 to be too defensively minded. Now, the reason for that...
You're saying this like it's a FIFA Ultimate Team and it's actually going to play.
Right. You're not one of these that plays like a 4-3-3 team of the season but has strikers on the wing, are you? Because
to be fair, I have not played FIFA or EAFC.
Well, no, I'm not even saying FIFA Ultimate Team, but just any, pick a team of the season and have strikers on the wing, because that annoys me. Anyway, I have gone Ethan Aaron. Again, your Rolls Royce of a midfielder. We all know how he will be playing in the Championship sooner rather than later. We just hope that's with us. Class player. There's a reason we're talking about him as one of our first, our first £1 million player. He is that good. So we've got Ethan in. I don't care how many games he played, how many more he could have played, or how he's not quite as good because he didn't play as many. Liam Bridcut. Again, he came in, and no matter what game he played, you just knew he was a class above the whole time. Absolutely exceptional. And the third one, again, I really struggled with, because I think probably throughout my time, the players that were in those centre mid positions were probably on par with each other, a lot of them. But I have gone with a number 10, Brennan Johnson, just because of how much he helped us get to the position we were in that season. And I don't like picking a lone player, by the way.
Yeah, if I'm going to twist your arm, Brennan Johnson or somebody else?
It would have been all George Grant.
Okay, yeah, honestly. Fair enough. Yeah,
honestly, it would have been one of the two. And I was really torn between the two.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to include lone players, then Johnson and Rogers will probably feature in a lot of teams just because of what they're doing now and incredible.
I wouldn't include Rogers because he was only here for 6 months, and I know that's a little bit hypocritical considering I'm including Brennan, who was only here for 12. But I just think some of his contributions, like that MK Dons game, granted he shouldn't have been on the pitch when he scored his hat trick, but he was, and he was one of the big reasons why we still got the playoffs and probably could and should have got higher.
There we go. Right, and then up top. So you've got 3, I've got 2. So I'll let you go first. Alex Palmer was also a lone player. Very true. I'd forgotten about that one. Yes, we went through our lone goalkeeper period, didn't we? Go on then, Charlie, your front 3.
Oh, this is awful. This is why are we being asked these questions? Right. Right wing. And should probably be more right mid than right wing. I don't care. I'm including him. It's Harry Anderson. Left wing, Anthony Scully.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And again, for the record, I appreciate that this is very, very recent centric, but
you're a fetus.
I'm a young boy. So, I am a baby.
And then fill in that number 9 role, Charlie.
I could have picked this. Go on, give me your 2. Okay, I want to see whether you got any of the ones that I would have said.
They're from a similar era. It was sort of Keith's glory years. You can't have a Lincoln City 11 and not discuss Simon Yeo. Obviously not the best of seasons until he sort of sprang into life in the playoff charge, but then just absolutely cemented himself as a Lincoln City legend. So for me, again, given the golden era of me watching Lincoln City as a younger lad, Simon Yeo has to be in there, and also Jamie Forrester. Like Jamie Forrester was a talent beyond talent. I think he was way too good for the division that we were playing in at the time. He was way too good for us. I don't really know how we managed to sign him, but when you can bang in goals like he did, in obviously partnering with Mark Stallard as well, he was just an incredible striker to watch. And I think he got bumped up back in my thoughts the other day when we were talking about the hat tricks. Obviously away at Mansfield getting all 4, that was a pretty special day. But yeah, for me, it just imagine you and Forrester up top. It'd be amazing.
So my first Lincoln City game, Ben, was in 2011, and it was in August of 2011. So we were already relegated to the National League when I went to my very first Lincoln City match.
That makes me feel very old.
27th of August at home, Friday night, 1-1 draw against Stockport. And there are a few players from that era that you would like to include, that I would like to include from the 2011s to 2011 to, let's say, 14, of course. However, there is one man up top. I don't care what his ability is. I don't care if he's still playing or not. He will always be the Lincoln City striker for me.
Yep.
Matt Reed. You already knew where I was going.
Yeah, everybody does.
I can go with any of the recent shots. I can go with Tyler Walker because of his lone half of the season where he got 19 goals. I could have literally anyone else. I could have Tom Hopper for what he did in the playoff season, whatever. Matt Reed is the Lincoln City striker that I grew up loving in the same way that you did, but not Matt Reed,
Yeah. Look, I mean, I you can't argue with either of them. I think the thing is, we've grown up in different eras of supporting Lincoln City, and I think there's no right wrong answers with this. We'll just go through some of the suggestions here. So we've got Sam Ellis there. Ellis left in 1977. Who was I thinking of? I was thinking of somebody completely different. Apologies, because that was before I was born. Tomo says Andy Brown. Got to have Glenn Cochrane in the midfield, best by a country mile. I must admit, Malcolm here, the Stacey West historian, says, I must admit that out of all the midfield players I've seen over the years, I would also include Arahan. Glenn Cockrell says Richard Godson. That was about Andy Brown says Gareth. Dave Smith on the left for me, says Richard. Front three of Dixie Neal, Mick Harford, and Percy Freeman. Percy Freeman, Mick Harford. Great choice, Malcolm. Although I want Gordon Hobson in there somewhere. I must sound like when Dad used to talk of Andy Graver and George Hanna. And John Booth finishing it with Matt Reed will always deserve an honorary mention with a Lincoln City 11. Very fair. And Malcolm said maybe when else was manager. That's probably where I was thinking. I knew the name. Yeah.
So, do you know what? I just want to kind of add to that, by the way, because you said it kind of at the start of when you were just talking there. We grew up in different times watching different Lincoln City 11s when we kind of think of nostalgia. My nostalgia is your recent times. I'm not trying to make you feel old here, by the way.
Well, you're succeeding, regardless whether you try it or not.
But do you know what? I want to obviously know a lot more about the past. And you pick up bits and you go back and you watch certain things. But I also just want to kind of add to what we were just talking about there. We've got totally different 11s. It's really nice that we'll sit here and we've got all of the comments going on about all these different eras, talking about all these different players. It is kind of a nice thing to be able to bring it all together. You'll never get the perfect 11 because everyone's is going to be different. It's always going to be based on nostalgia. But to have lots of different kind of age groups coming together for that is always a nice little feeling.
Absolutely. So look, thank you so much, Shane, for the question. Always a good little diversion, a good little tangent ahead of the business of the club. So let's get into the business, Charlie. We're at home again at the weekend. Very, very nice to have back-to-back home games against Exeter City. This one has not been postponed due to international call-ups. I'm sure they're, there was a tweet from them that just felt like it had a little bit of needle in it, didn't it? The other day. It's not being postponed. It's like, okay, cool. All right. But yeah, look, Exeter on a pretty decent run at the moment. It seems like they might be shaking off the relegation fears that they had only a few weeks back. They are looking relatively strong comparison to where they were a few weeks back. I think Gary Caldwell was saying that the other day that the main source of this was that they had a bit of a team break and they went to Spain for a few days, and it seems like they've bonded and really galvanized themselves ahead of a big survival push. So Charlie, what have you got for me on Exeter? Again, 3 draws, 2 wins, and a loss in the last 6. The last 5 of those are the unbeaten ones. So, yeah, tough one, Charlie. What do you reckon?
Look, it is. Exeter's. Do you know, Exeter is such a weird club in this league. I spoke with Chris on our EFL Hub podcast probably about 2 months ago now, and between me and him, we predicted a team who we thought would start dropping down the league a little bit in League One. Now, my pick for this was Exeter, and I was so right. That first 4 weeks. They had loss after loss after loss. And I'm like, do you know what? I look like I'm a mastermind at League One football. And now they've turned it around, and it's a little bit annoying. But it's similar to what they did last year. They had a really long period around kind of that Christmas, New Year area where they'd gone 12, 13 games without a win and then managed to turn it around under Gary Caldwell. And for whatever reason, he seems to have this ability to really turn the ship around. Obviously, he said this time round it was using kind of a warm weather training camp and a bit of a bonding exercise over in Spain. Fair play to him. Last year, whatever it was, worked as well. And they really have turned the ship around to be able to go on this 5-game unbeaten run. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't still chinks in the armour, because there very much are. In terms of both ends of the pitch, honestly, they are really, really poor. Attacking wise, they are one of the worst in the division in terms of their chances created. They are, I believe, they're like 23rd in the league in terms of XG scored, and that that shows that they're just not being able to get the ball into the right areas enough. Their shots on target per match, 23rd in the league. Big chances is very much also down there. What they do is they play a little bit of long ball football, maybe a little bit more than you would expect from other teams around them in the same sort of position. But they're just not getting the ball in the opposition half quite as much as they would want to, and especially in the opposition box. Now, in terms of our defensive solidity, I think it's something that we've started to turn up a little bit over the last few weeks. We've spoken, even against Birmingham, where we lost the game, we were really praising our defensive solidity. And although we maybe didn't need to do it quite as much against Bristol Rovers as we did last season, for example, when realistically Lucas Jensen probably should have conceded 4 or 5 and didn't. I don't see Exeter creating enough chances to be able to get a goal past us. Now, then it becomes on to us. Although they've got holes defensively, we've got to be the ones that capitalise on them. The way that we've been playing recently, the attacking style of play that I think we've really implemented over the last few weeks, even I thought against Birmingham, where it was a 1-0 loss, but when we got the opportunities, I thought we played some nice football. It shows that we've got that capability to be able to exploit the opportunities that they will give us. So, 1 or 2-0, we can dream.
Yeah, I mean, look, you go back to the game earlier on in the season away at their place, and it was one of those games that had a lot of fire around it, but not really, any result. Like, it was obviously a 0-0. There wasn't a huge amount of,
but that was a lunchtime kickoff. And
it was,
as we know about lunchtime kickoffs, is they're guaranteed to be 0-0s, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. But look, I mean that was a weird old game. I think it was it Ryan Wood got sent off after Irahan was needling him for a while. He properly wound him up, got 2 yellow cards. If I remember rightly as well. Oh yeah, it is, because this is why I don't like Gary Caldwell. His assistant got sent off, didn't he, for holding the ball ahead of a throw in. And he was doing it, and Gary Caldwell gave it the old, "What? Not me," like looking at the ref, kind of, winding everybody up. Not his biggest fan, to be honest, but it was quite nice to see them go on the FA Cup run as a representative from League One this season. But look, they don't seem to have changed the style all that much this season so far. I think they're still playing that sort of 3-4. What is it? 4-3, 4-2. hang on, what was the formation? 4-3-1-2 or 4-3-2-1? Sorry, yeah, numbers. Yeah, it was, that sort of formation with the interchangeable top 2, top 1. It seems to be pretty consistent all the way through the season. Do you reckon we're going to stick with the same sort of formation and mindset, Charlie, that saw us dismantle Bristol Rovers at the weekend, or are we maybe going to tweak it a little bit? Personally, I don't really see too much of a reason to change anything.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Absolutely.
And I think, again, somebody like an Exeter who have had over the course of the season probably quite a poor year, although they are currently sat outside of that relegation zone and somewhat comfortably outside of that relegation zone. Their performances haven't necessarily suggested they should be quite as clear as what they actually are. So, they've not really had a great year. And when you come up against a team like that, you don't really need to focus on them as much as you'd maybe think that you would need to against, the likes of facing a Wrexham, a Birmingham, a Wickham. You need to focus on yourself. And for us to focus on ourselves right now is literally to replicate what we did last week. It's to replicate what we've done in those big results games that we've had recently. Now, I had a little bit of a laugh with a friend of mine at the weekend, actually, because I was showing him our recent record and, 4 wins in the last 10, last 9, something like that. But all 4 of those wins have been big wins. 5-0, 3-0 against Mansfield was chucked in there. The 5-1 against Peterborough was chucked in there. They're all big victories, and yet the games that we lose or draw are really tight games. So as far as I'm concerned, we carry on doing what we did to beat those teams in such a fashion. And against a team like Exeter, I think if we do that, we could have another result similar to last week. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to go out and beat Exeter 5-0. Of course, that would be nice.
That's exactly what you're saying, Charlie. Come on.
No, it is. But I think we could go ahead and really, take the game to them by doing what we know we can do well, rather than worrying about what they might be able to do to stop us from being able to play well. So I'm hoping that that's the way that it's looked at going into the weekend.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I don't think there's going to be. I don't think there'll be too many changes. I think. Well, Roy suggested here no change in 2-0 Imps. It's going to be. I think if we get off on the right, on the right foot with it, we're attacking, we take the game to them, like you say. I think if we play like we did on Saturday against a team that is, I don't want to say low on confidence because they're obviously on a good run, but maybe they've still got one eye on the bottom half of the bottom 4.
Yeah.
I think if we take the game to a team that is looking over the shoulder a little bit, I think we'll be all right. I think we'll I'm not quite as confident of pulling out a goal with a game with more than 2 goals in it to win, but I'd like to think hopefully another clean sheet for George Wickens, and there we go. So yeah, I'm going to say a 2-0 win as well. I think Roy might have that one spot on. So that is our Exeter preview. I do have a preview scheduled to record tomorrow. I think it was with Chris, who I did the away preview with. I'm hoping that we can get that done, although Chris, Mr. Lamming and I are heading over to the EPC tomorrow for the evening with Jez, which I'm very much looking forward to. And then I'm trying to think of other bits that we have that we need to plug, that we are allowed to plug ahead of wrapping up, Charlie.
I think it's always worth a little mention. There is a raffle going on at the minute, isn't there, Ben?
Absolutely, there is. Get yourselves onto staceywest.net. Just running through the prizes now. There is a 2023-24 squad signed Lincoln City shirt donated by the former Players Association, a framed signed Bradford Memorial Match shirt donated by the former Players Association as well. There's an Imp Tunes Mansfield Town cartoon signed by Jeffries, Clucas, O'Connor, Scubala, and G-Cock. A gin box with gin mixes and surprises, a £100 Bailgate clothing voucher, 5 copies of Gaz's book, and I said I would also throw in a Cinselbank model into that raffle pot as well. Get yourselves over to it. StaceyWest.net. It is one of the first. I think it's the pinned post on there at the moment. I am scrambling desperately to try and find Gaz's fundraising page. He's put that many links in the post. I can't actually see which one it is. Oh, there we go. You can do so here. There we go. So Gary is up to well over $3,500 on his personal page. I believe there's also some donations that have come in to the foundation page as well. I'm just going to type out the link into our live chat. All the details are here. And there we go. Get involved. I'm consistently amazed at how well Gaz is doing through all of this. And he is, I've got no doubt that he's going to just absolutely smash the marathon when he gets there. All the best to him for doing so. I feel dirty. I've said nice things about him. Quick, Charlie, say something else.
Take the shine away from Gaz for a moment. What I will say is, if you buy raffle tickets or anything like that, and even if you don't win, even if Gaz doesn't get the time he wants on the marathon, which I'm sure he will, by the way, the real winners out of all of this will be the foundation.
100%.
They will do fantastic things with the money that is provided. It sounds like now it's some children in need kind of donation plug, but that is not the case. The foundation do amazing work already. Gaz has been down and seen it. I've seen it firsthand. Ben has seen it firsthand. Everyone in and around Lincoln, whether you know it or not, will have seen firsthand the work that the foundation do. So let's make sure that keeps on going. And the money is for that, remember.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. So that, I think, is probably going to do us. I don't think there's anything else that we need to plug other than the regular stuff. So get yourself subscribed on the YouTube channel. Go over to Patreon if you want to get involved in the Discord, where we have a nice little community in there. We've got a bunch of it's an odd one. It's a social media platform with reasonable discussion.
A bunch of odd ones. Well, I wouldn't say that about them, mate.
No, I didn't say that, did I? But look, there's it's a really good little community that we've got brewing there. Lots of discussion in there. If you want to get involved, you can also submit questions for the podcast in advance, so you might get something a bit more than a scrambled, claw at a memory that we've tended to give today. And other than that, I don't think there's too much more to say, Charlie, other than up the Imps.
Up the Imps.
Hey!